My name is Michael. I'm a compulsive overeater, and I weigh and measure 3 meals a day with the gray sheet. I write them down, I turn them over to my sponsor, and I don't eat no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. My story is a long story of trial and error. And I'm classic, the person in the big book that they talk about who holds on to that thought that one day I'll be normal. And I've held on to that idea since 1974. In 1974, I showed up at my first Overeaters Anonymous meeting. I weighed 450 pounds. I fell into the fellowship immediately. One of my shortcomings is that when I do something, I do it 110%. The problem I have is sustaining that 110% one day at a time for the rest of the time. I've had long periods of abstinence as I've defined it. I had 10 years of back-to-back abstinence. In Overeaters Anonymous, I lost over 250 pounds. Did everything that they said to do: service, sponsors, led meetings, started meetings, ran retreats, started the original conference that was held at the Concord. I was one of the 4 people that started that. Went to World Service as a delegate, was chairperson of Intergroups. So I threw myself into the program. And then one day, I decided, I can't even remember why, after 10 years, that I could moderate meal it. And of course, we all know what happens when you try and do that. Now, my weight did not come on gangbusters. I didn't go out and start binging my head off. And that's the insanity of my disease. Because for a very long period of time, my body would tell me that I was doing okay because I didn't gain a tremendous amount of weight. And for me, as an overeater, with respect, and somebody who weighed a lot, that was always the measure of my success. And even though, you know, I worked the steps and I did all the things that everybody said to do, did a 4th step, worked the steps 2 or 3 different times over those 10 years, there was that little voice inside of me that said, you know, you're together in so many other areas of your life. You know, you really don't have to do this the way everybody else is doing it. You're different. So to make a long story short, I gained back probably about 75 pounds. And I happened to be living with somebody at the time, who I'm now married to, who was in the Gray Sheet community. And she had been in Gray Sheet for about a year. And I watched the profound changes that began to happen with her. And I wasn't ready to do Gray Sheet without exception. So I prayed. I've always prayed, you know, but I've always been confused as to what my will was and God's will was. I've always had trouble figuring those 2 things out. And I asked God to help me, that I knew I needed help. I knew that if I continued on the path, I would eventually be 450 again, and maybe even 500, and maybe dead. And one day, much to my surprise and my wife's surprise, I showed up at Yon House in Manhattan. And again, got it, whatever that means. Over 3 years of back-to-back gray sheet abstinence, weighing and measuring without exception, doing everything, carrying the message into the OA rooms, which at the time was anathema because that was around the time that they came up with this concept of dignity of choice, which for me really was feeding into my disease because it took away what Gray Sheet gave me. And what Gray Sheet gave me more than anything else, it put the food in its place. The food was no longer the dominant issue in my life. As long as I was willing to weigh and measure my food without exception, anything related to my weight and my food was taken care of. That was the surrender. That's what Gray Sheet promised me. And I did it for 3 years. I did it until, again, that little voice in the back of my head, that insanity, you know, the disease hangs around, it doesn't go away, said to me, you've done this for 3 years. You got this under control. You have this under control. Well, it started. And I proceeded over the next 30 years to come in and out of Gray Sheet. When I came into Gray Sheet, I got abstinent right away, and I put years together of back-to-back weighing and measuring without exception. Did all the things I was supposed to do. But again, that thought that the big book clearly says has to be crushed. It can't be there. It can't be there. As long as I hold on to that in any way, shape, or form, I'm doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. I've always been around the Gray Sheet community and the 12-step community. So fortunately for me, this time around, when I came into Gray Sheet, I lost even more weight. I went down to 188 pounds. I gained probably 105 of that back. And then I came into Gray Sheet in Connecticut, and I lost it again. This time, by the grace of God and the fact that I knew I had a weigh and measure. I just wanted to do it with exception. And I did that probably for the last 7 years. And because I weighed and measured 90% of what I ate, my weight didn't exhibit the manifestation that it did before. I didn't gain a tremendous amount of weight. I probably gained about 50 pounds. And 50 pounds for me, coming from where I come from, you know, I say it's a drop in the bucket. It's not. It's not. Well, May 4th of this year, I was going to be turning 80 years old. And by the grace of God, I'm a relatively healthy human being. I have no major problems. But I live with somebody who has been abstinent a long time and who has been dealing with great medical issues. And I watched how she dealt with this, and it just amazed me. The power of example, how she, her faith in the program, how she worked the program, how she didn't pick up. she's a lot more courageous than I think I am. And I think the combination of watching my wife and my realizing that I'm 80 years old and that I'd really like to live to break 100. I think that would be a hell of an achievement if God's will is that I do that. But I sure am not going to be able to do that if I don't weigh and measure my food. So what have I experienced since I came back? Like I said, it happens real quick for me. I am doing more things each day, whether I have to or not, to stay abstinent. I can't count how many phone calls I make. I go to at least 6 or 7 meetings a week. I sponsor. I qualify. And I said to my wife today, I think this is the last time I qualify until hopefully I have my 1-year anniversary. So I have something to look forward to. And what has happened is that I have experienced a new freedom that I've never experienced before in these rooms. I really believe that if I weigh and measure my food and I do all the things that are suggested, that I can get rid of some of the baggage that I've been carrying around, even though I've done all those 4 steps. Though, you know, I've always felt that your character defects never go away. You just become more aware of them, and using 10, 11, and 12, you know, you could do something about them on a daily basis so they don't build up and fester and turn into resentment and anger and all those things. I've become much calmer, more peaceful. I struggle with the thought. It comes back periodically, but I guess it's my devil that there's a part of me that says, oh, you don't have to do this. But the truth of the matter is I do have to do it. But I'm acknowledging that publicly, which I've never done before. I've never talked about that thought that persists in my mind because I don't want to be different. I hate being different. I've always wanted to be part of. And part of that has to be, that whole piece has to go away. If it doesn't go away.
2 minutes, Jack. Michael, sorry, 2 minutes.
That's okay. That if it doesn't go away, I'm going to end up repeating. So for today, I do everything that I'm supposed to do. I'm doing an AWOL starting next month. Even though I've been through the steps, and even though, you know, I've done this, I'm sure there are things that have gotten in my way. I don't think that thought that persists in me happens in isolation. I think it's connected with other pieces of my personality and my character defects and my shortcomings. And I would really like to get rid of that, because that will be the death of me. That will kill me. My point, I guess I want to leave everybody with is, no matter how long it takes, if you keep coming back, no matter what, whether you're eating or not eating or on day 1 or day 0, if you keep coming back, the chances that you're going to get it a heck of a lot better than if you stop. And we well relish the newcomer, the day counter. Why? Because those are the people that help us to stay abstinent. It reminds me how fragile my abstinence is, and that I have to be willing to do everything. And by the grace of God and the program and the fellowship, I'm able to do that. And thank you for letting me qualify.